Country Fox one.
Do you think it's been 10 seconds?
Sopranos.
I'm going. Ascend setting is live.
All right, hey, anybody out there watching? This is Ascend route setting crew, and we are going to answer a bunch of questions that we got from people over the last couple of days. Before we get into the questions, though, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So when you introduce yourself, just give name, what location you primarily set at, fondest setting memory, and what you've been up to during the social distancing period. All right, Micah, take it away.
Woo. My name is Micah. I am a routesetter at Ascend in Pittsburgh. I've been working there since we opened. And I think my fondest route setting memory would be just kind of watching the finals for the NCS Nationals. It was really great to watch all the competitors climb those boulders and see our hard work pay off.
Cool. Ryan.
All right, hey guys, I'm Ryan. I'm in Pittsburgh as well. Fondest setting memory. Let's see. Well, there haven't been too many. I've only been at it a few months, but one time Jake and I were arguing over a foothold placement, and then Brian came up and said that I was right, and it was funny.
Awesome. All right, Jake, rebuttal.
Rebuttal is that I am better than Ryan. Also, my name is Jake, and I said at Pittsburgh. And my fondest memory probably be watching my first finals round boulder, which I think was in the fall of 2019, the first one that I set. So that was cool.
Cool. Ben.
My name's Ben. I'm a routesetter at Youngstown. Fondest route setting memory so far is probably busting into those boxes of rock candy holds. That was awesome. And during this quarantine, just trying to stay fit, healthy. Playing a lot of disc golf. It's my new sport for the quarantine.
Cool. Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria. I set only at Pittsburgh. And my favorite route setting memory has nothing to do with route setting, but it was a prank that we pulled last year on Micah. And long story short, locked him in the top out boulder with his trumpet, and he had to play his trumpet to get out. And it was wonderful.
That was awesome. Aaron.
Hey guys, I'm Aaron. I am one of the owners at Ascend and the director of route setting. Although when it comes to the physical route setting anymore, these other folk here are doing most of the physical setting. I do set some both at Youngstown and Pittsburgh though. I would say maybe my fondest setting memory, and this is not a slight to any of you, but I really appreciate the alone setting that I got to do when we were opening. So some of the opening set, having a lot of time just to kind of work by ourselves.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. 3 a.m. setting.
Yeah.
T.
Hi, my name is T. I work in Youngstown. My favorite setting memories is probably when we're done setting and Ben and Connor holding hands to climb a route.
Nice. I wish I would have been there for that. Connor.
Hey guys, I'm Connor. I set here in Youngstown. my fondest setting memory is probably when Transcend did their opening set. Jeremy Ho and TJ Sanford came in, and I got to come in and do some forerunning with them and hang out and climb with two of the better setters in the country and just have a good time.
Yeah, those guys are awesome. I'm Brian. I'm the head route setter, and during this social distancing, I've been climbing on my home wall, taking a nice afternoon nap some days. What else have I been doing? Going for walks along with everybody else in the neighborhood. So many people out there just wandering around. And my fondest setting memory is I actually posed this question, and I've been kind of dreading answering it because I've worked with a lot of really good people over the course of my setting career. And but I think when I think back to the funniest thing that has happened while we're setting is this last regionals in December with Jenna, Marie, and I were walking around the comp boulder, and Marie just slid down a volume, and that's all I'll say about that. It was really funny, and I'll probably never forget that. Okay, so there's everybody. That's Ascend's route setting crew. So we get a lot of questions about just the basics of route setting, like what goes into it. And so we had a little conversation about that a second ago, and I'm going to let everybody just kind of go into what they were saying a few minutes ago. Okay, so yeah, what are the easy questions to answer about route setting, guys?
I think one of the most often asked question we get is the idea of, is there a map? Is there a plan? How do you come up with the routes? I think is the one that I get the most, or probably all of you guys. Is there a map? Anybody? No?
No.
I think we all have different ways of going about our process of putting a route up. You know, I know for me it's more like usually an idea of some moves I want to try to work in. I know some people are a little bit more aesthetically driven.
Cool, but yeah, nobody's ever sitting behind the route setter with a laser pointer telling them to put the hold up there, or no setter has a tablet out looking at a map or a grid or a program or something that some other place came up with, like a library of climbs to put up. So all of these climbs people are putting up in the gym are going straight from their head onto the wall. Yeah, that was a good one. Anything else? There's some other things we were talking about.
One that I brought up that we didn't really settle on an answer for was like what it takes to be a route setter. And I think I've been thinking about it a little bit since, and I think an easy answer is like nothing, but the things that help are like creativity, open-mindedness, being willing to collaborate and learn, and climbing experience, obviously.
Cool. Yeah, so we could talk a little bit now about how y'all got into route setting. We can go around again, just take a quick second and just say, you know, what got you into route setting. I got into route setting a while ago in Warren, Pennsylvania, where I'm from, a long time ago, with a guy named Dana, who actually just is in the process of opening up a little gym up there, which is awesome for him. But he kind of got me into route setting, and we were some of the only people climbing up there. So we would climb up in his garage wall and just make up these terrible little climbs that went across his roof, or, you know, we had not that many pads. So that's how I got into route setting, and then it just kind of grew from there. We'll just go around again. Micah.
Well, I grew up in Colorado Springs, and I did a little bit of setting, you know, in my undergrad when I was living in northern Colorado. And then I took a pretty long break as I was going to school and stuff. And after I finished in Pittsburgh, Ascend was opening, and yeah, I got my first commercial setting job at Ascend, and I was really thankful for the opportunity. And it's been really an awesome an awesome job ever since.
Oops. Yeah, it was great picking you up right at the beginning. Yeah, and having you for that last couple years. It's been awesome. Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, I've worked at Ascend since we opened. Like Micah, I was also in school for music at the same place. So I was in school for the first couple years, and then when I started kind of working at Ascend more, eventually they decided with a lot of I don't know, favors, begging, pleading. They eventually said, "Okay, we'll let you."
Sweet. Jake.
Cool. Well, real quick, first, I'll just do a tangent to answer one of the questions that Caitlin put in the chat about 3D printing holds. We actually bought a 3D printer at the beginning of quarantine to do not hold printing, but we tried hold printing. And for the most part, the holds we printed were like way too flexy and not very confidence inspiring to climb on. So I don't have much advice there, but there is a really cool Facebook group called DIY Climbing Holds. And I would definitely look that up. There's been a lot of talk on there about 3D printing holds. So I'm sure you could find some good resources there to learn how to do that. And as far as me getting started route setting, when I went to school, I went to Slippery Rock. The first friends I met were at the rock climbing wall. And then I kind of just like settled in with them. And it was pretty natural for me to start working there. And then once I started working there, I started setting. And then once I graduated, I came to Ascend. And the rest is history.
Honor.
Kind of the same story as Jake. I started off at YSU at the bouldering wall there and kind of never left, got a job setting there, and now I'm lucky enough to be able to set and work for Ascend here in Youngstown.
Cool. Thanks. Maria?
I only started climbing just a little bit before I started working at Ascend, though I'd done a lot of other competitive sports before. And I think, yeah, just a little bit after I started working there, I came on as a route setter. I don't think this is how it happened, but how I remember it is that I was sitting at the bar, the front desk thing, and then Brian approached me, and I had never talked to him before, and I was very intimidated. And then in my head, he asked if I wanted to be a setter. I'm pretty sure that's not what happened, but that's how I remember it.
Sounds just like something I would do. I'm going to take a second and answer the second part of that question that Jake responded to about what advice would you give somebody building a home wall. I won't go too deeply into that because I wrote a blog post about it on Ascend's blog, so you can take a look at that. But I think it's really important when you're building a home wall to have just like when you're putting a route up, having a really good idea before you start building it of what you want to get out of the wall and try to build it to suit your specifications. So if you want to build a wall to just train on, then you don't need a lot. If you want to build a wall that you can have some really interesting competitive style movements, then you're going to need a bigger wall. You're going to need bigger space for more holes and things. So yeah, just having a good idea of what you want when you start. If you have any other questions about that specifically, you can get a hold of me, email me or something. Aaron.
So for me, for setting, started a while ago now. I kind of had worked in the adventure camping world for a little while, doing whitewater rafting, mountain biking, and climbing was one of the things that we did, which is really where I started to learn a lot just about, the sport of climbing. And then through that, I kind of fell in love with climbing, picked that up, moved to North Carolina, and stumbled into a job, and I mean stumbled into a job, at Inner Peaks in North Carolina in Charlotte. They maybe I interviewed really well. I don't know, but somehow I got the head Routesetter job there with next to zero experience. And you know, I got to work there and learn from some of the setters that were on staff there. And that was just a really good experience. And then when I came back up to Pittsburgh, we had, I worked over at TCW, the climbing wall, and sat over there for a few years, and then started working towards, you know, making Ascend happen, and have been setting at Ascend since then. So.
Cool. T.
So I started climbing around like high school. So when I did my orientation at Youngstown State and they have a rock wall, and I'm like, this is it, I'm going to the school. And I mean, setting is something I'm always curious about, and I was lucky enough to like have the school give us the opportunity to just like mess around and put up holes on the wall, and that's how it goes. And I know that I like the only thing I did was just putting holes on the wall. I didn't have any idea of like how to make a route. So I talked to people and just joined different climbing crew and just learn from them. Now
Cool.
we're for Ascend.
Cool. Thanks. Ben.
So I started setting actually when our Youngstown gym was still Transcend. You know, I was just getting into climbing, you know, probably getting to the point where I was really starting to understand it a little bit. And one night I was just hanging out at the gym till close, and Paul Demeco ended up inviting me and my brother to stay after hours a bit, mess around, put some roots up. And since then, I've just been kind of, you know, while I was still Transcend anyway, just going in setting every couple weeks here and there. And now I'm lucky enough to stay on the team while we're Ascend.
Cool. All right. Yeah, so that's how everybody gets into route setting. It sounds like there's not like one way into route setting. Everybody's kind of a climber first, and they end up at the gym more than other people are at the gym. And eventually somebody asks them to put blobs of plastic up on the wall. Speaking of that, Ryan had talked about maybe explaining the way that holds get attached to the wall. So if you have no idea what's keeping those holds on the wall, explain it to you really quickly. So it's just a sheet of plywood with what's called a T-nut on the back side of it. And that's just like a little threaded nut that goes in the back of the wall. It's screwed in, and then we put the hold up, bolt goes through the hole, and it stays on the wall. Okay, that is how holds stay up.
Yeah, and one question I get a lot about that too is like people sometimes think that setters have to like go behind the wall and like remove that nut so that they can take the holds off of the wall. That's not necessarily true either. It's just you just thread it right into that bolt hole, and you can just from the front of the wall just use a drill and put it in and out. So
We only have to do that if we mess up.
And when Maria's working, I've had to go back there a lot.
Nope. Just one time in particular.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. Not with just Maria, but everybody's had to go behind the wall sometime.
Yeah, I got Brian a good time recently. Sorry, Brian.
Jake had to do it 3 times in day one. Also, Jake almost sawed through a bolt once, which was very exciting.
Did you mean to saw through the bolt?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hope you eventually sawed the rest of the bolt off, and it didn't not just half sawed somewhere in the back and it'd been a bolt.
Oh, it's all taken care of.
Actually, there is a half bolt because another story of Jake's manliness was it was a hold from Youngstown. Actually, it was like a blue jug, and it had a T-nut stuck or whatever, and Jake took bolt cutters and like cut the bolt, and half the bolt just flew across the storage room. We don't know where it is. So.
Never found it.
You guys got that off?
Yeah,
we just snapped it with a bolt
Jake
cutter.
cut it with, like bolt cutters.
Got a nice jug out of it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So thanks for your hold.
Yeah, it's ours now. It's on the wall already.
It's ours.
You can get it back. All right, let's answer some questions from Jada. Sent me some questions in earlier today, I think. So we're not going to go around in a circle again. Just if you want to answer the question. Other people can chime in as they see fit. So do you often collaborate on setting routes, or do you set them individually?
I would say it kind of depends on the day and how much we need to get done that day. If we have a lighter setting day, we often collaborate setting the route. But if we have a heavy setting day, uh, first half of the day, generally everyone gets their assignments on the wall. And then forerunning is always a collaborative process. So we do try and forerun all the routes as a team and get them to where they need to be for all of our members.
Cool. Micah, can you explain forerunning to people?
Yeah, so forerunning I think is it's a really important part of our job. It generally takes up half the day, it seems like. So generally when we put up a route, we have an idea or a purpose in mind for that route. So we'll have a grade and we'll have kind of a style within the grade that route needs to accommodate for the members. And that's, not to mention it needs to be fair, it needs to be safe. Those are our two big ones, and fun. And so we'll try all of our our raw products, I guess you could say, our initial ideas that are on the wall. And we will tweak them and change them until they are fun, safe, and fair, and checking all the boxes that we want that route to check. And so we could move holds, change holds. Sometimes it's just not even worth it and we have to take the whole thing down and start over. So yeah, that's what forerunning is.
Cool. Yeah, forerunning is always usually my favorite part of the day. It's always where a lot of route setting is like pretty cerebral and a lot of thinking goes into it. I think somebody asked a question about empathy, so we'll talk a little bit how that plays into route setting. But yeah, the forerunning part is where we get to sit down and, like Micah said, think about what we wanted the route to do and who we wanted the route to be for and what we wanted those people to get out of the route. And then at that point, we start making those tweaks, like adjusting the holds, making the hold bigger, smaller, turn the hold, make it a little bit more tensiony or a little bit easier to fall off of, like more slippery. You could think about it like that. Yeah, until we end up with a route that's the way we want it, ideally. If we're running out of time, sacrifices must be made. Things need to get done. Itai had a question, how to set above your level. So if you're a V5 climber, set a V7, 8, or how would you go about it? Okay, I'll answer that real quick and then some other people can chime in on how they do it. But I would say that initially it's going to be really hard to set above your level until you get a really good foundation of what basic movement looks like and how you climb. So if you're trying to do that on your home wall, I would say set something that you can do, but that's hard for you. And then an easy way to do it is just make the feet a little bit worse. Make a key handhold a little bit worse. You can start turning holds just little bits at a time. If you turn them too quickly or too much, it'll change the movement completely. So I would stick with setting something that you're comfortable with and then start turning them, and then eventually just start exploring setting movements that you don't know how to do and kind of seeing if you're able to do them at some point in the future. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think from a kind of a home wall perspective, or even setting, I guess, is you tend to just set things that you can do immediately. So for me, it's if I just set a route, it's going to be V5, just because that's kind of my on-site level, that it's this is an easy on-site, just do it. And so I think trying to do things that are harder, you just have to be willing to fail on it more than one time. And this happens in forerunning too sometimes, that we either get stuck in projecting where we keep trying things so many times or the opposite of being like, it didn't work the first time, I'm going to change it. So I think if you're trying to set harder, being willing to fail and fail and fail over and over again on those moves, and just realize that, yeah, if you want it to be harder than what you can do, you shouldn't be able to do it. So not just automatically like downgrading it to what you can do.
I would say too, I think part of that question of being able to set for something that's harder than what you might climb is, as we have been setting as a team and everything, we kind of build a practice of knowing what terrain, like, you know, whether that's a slab or a steep wall or something, like is appropriate for different grades, knowing that certain moves fit easier levels or harder levels better, and like being able to tweak in that way. So starting, I think, from a point of knowing what grade you want to hit in the first place, and then adjusting everything to be in that vein. Maybe that's obvious, but I think once from a setting perspective, putting pieces together from the back end first. I don't know. Do you guys know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably I think maybe what you're trying to say is, you know, starting with the right idea. So don't try to set something that's outside the grade range that you want to set. Like you can't set like a triple paddle dyno with a ninja kick and try to set it in like the yellow circuit. It's just not going to work.
I feel like I see it a lot, or think about that a lot too, in competitions. Even if in competitions we're not necessarily assigning grades, just thinking about what kind of difficulty is appropriate for that climbers in that grade. And I think you were talking about empathy, and I think for me that's where that fits in a lot.
Cool. Yeah, so I hope that helped you, Ty. Back to Jada. So do you have a favorite wall to send to set a route on? Anybody? Either Ascend, Youngstown or Pittsburgh.
Gotta say, our 35 wall is really fun to set.
Definitely the 35.
Too fun.
Cool. 35-degree wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an awesome angle to set on. It's not too steep, just steep enough. Anybody else?
I think the most interesting for me usually is the slab wall, slab revert. It's just like you can do a lot of like really cool and weird and crazy things on it. So
Like 6 hand flips in a row, Jake. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
I like the comp wall.
Cool.
I kind of like our slab just to the left of the blue box. There's a little dihedral there, and I think that can at times yield really cool movement. And I also like the coffin wall. I think that
I agree with Mike. I like the coffin wall.
Yeah,
Like one of those walls that's like deceivingly steep.
Yeah, the coffin wall, for people who might not know what we're talking about, is if you're looking at the wave wall, which I hope you know what the wave wall is. It's climbers left of the wave wall, just around the corner facing the window. And we call it the coffin wall because the wall, if you look at it, kind of looks like a coffin. Yeah, I think my favorite is desk, arch, right and left. So from the front desk, if you're looking at the center of the arch, either one of those like steep overhanging corners with some volumes on it become these really interesting, potentially super complex, like overhanging corners.
we should talk about the history of desk arch right.
Please go ahead.
All right. Desk arch right is, I call it the setter's bane. Since we always have comps on the front, we're always like, that's always a sector where we have to set. And for some reason, it's really hard to just like nail a comp route first try on that. It just always ends up being some epic process to get it where we want it to go. And I think it's because it's deceptively steep. Like the bottom looks like it's vert, but it's actually overhanging. And then the wall above is like a lot steeper than it looks. So often we try and put like slopers or whatever, and they're just way too bad. It's a challenge. That's
Yeah, I
all.
mean that one panel there on the arch, the like first overhanging panel of the arch is like, I think it's at like 60 degrees overhung. Like it's steep. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, but it's really steep.
Yeah, we've been doing this a while. You'd think we'd learn. Steep. Just keep treating it like a power slab. Okay, another question from Jada. Do you ever get to try competition routes before you set them, or do you just do them day of and hope they work out?
Now we had a couple questions about this, and I'm not sure if she meant the like comp routes that we put up like just in regular sets, or if she meant like competition during the actual competitions.
I think the answer is the same though.
Yeah, the answer is the same. I think some people don't even know what this was a question I wanted to ask you guys. Was I think a lot of people aren't even quite aware of what the comp routes are when we put them in just like regular rotation. I know the Youngstown crew doesn't really have the normal comp route thing happen very often. But if somebody wants to speak to kind of like in regular setting, like our normal rotation, what comp routes mean whenever they get tagged that way.
Sure. But to answer that question really quickly, all the routes get tested before we let people climb on them, whether that's a comp circuit route or green circuit climb. A climb that we're setting for a competition, we'll spend a lot of extra time on those. But yeah, we'll forerun everything before we let people start climbing on it. Yeah, and anybody want to take a crack at Aaron's question?
And there might be some confusion too when we do like a finals round and people will see the setters just like scrambling and like throwing a route up. Those are set beforehand and then marked like there's two ways with just Sharpies on certain parts of the holds and then like putting foam earplugs in the certain T-nuts. And then so they'll take down the prelims routes and then just throw those up. So like it looks like they're just throwing them up, but they were the first thing to go up and then they came down and then the prelims ones went up, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, so anybody, what's a comp route? Like what do we do with the comp routes?
Well, since no one else is jumping in, I'll jump in.
You guys can talk too.
So competition routes tend to be stylistically a little bit different from just a standard route that we would put up in a circuit. Some competition routes are going to be, well, oftentimes the style is more dynamic and more like parkour style setting. So you're not going to have as many standard sort of moves as you would on just a normal commercially set route. We could also be trying to, really force climbers into more uncomfortable type situations, and really forcing people to sort of get into situations that we wouldn't ask. We're asking questions that we wouldn't ask on a commercial route. And we're hoping that with that exposure, our climbers are going to, be more familiar and accustomed to competition style routes when they go to competitions. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that was spot on. I think that's pretty much what a comp climb is usually. So some people ask what's the difference between a comp route and a commercial route, and what Micah just said is true. I think at the root of what those climbs are, though, they're basically the same when the route setter starts putting them on the wall. When a route setter starts doing something, no matter what it is, when they get their assignment, whether it's a commercial boulder on a normal day or a comp route on, a finals route on one of our competitions, they're starting with thinking about who that route is for and thinking about what questions they need to be asking that person with the route. If they're trying to test the climber in like a competition route in an actual on-site format, they're going to ask different questions of different people. Like Micah was saying, they're going to say, we have our men's finalists coming up. We know that they're this type of climber. Can we split them up using, physically difficult boulders? Maybe, maybe not. Should we set something a little bit more higher risk where they might slip off the holds or, something like that. So, whether it's comp style or commercial style, all the route setters are starting at the very beginning asking themselves, who's the route for? What do I want this route to do? And the answers to those questions is what makes it a comp route or a commercial route. Will anybody else have anything to add to that?
I was going to say, I think an interesting dynamic that might happen to people, like if they come into the gym after a competition and start getting on routes, and some of them, even if they look like they might be hard or really easy for some people, is that in competitions for kids, we're setting for different heights all the time. So there's different age groups and based on different sizes. So like if for youth D, just some of the younger kids, they're going to be really, really short. So we're going to be setting moves that are appropriate for them. And then if somebody who's older or taller gets on, it's going to be a completely different thing. So sometimes that's the discrepancy. And like if you're on a comp route and it feels different than how it looks.
Sweet. All right, another question. Where do you get inspiration for routes to set that may be a bit unexpected or unconventional, such as architecture, art, non-related or non-rock related natural features? So where do you pull inspiration from? And that kind of goes into another question that we had, where do you ever run out of inspiration, and what happens to a route setter when they have nothing to put on the wall, when they can't figure out what to do? Anybody?
I really don't know if I get any inspiration from anywhere except like rock. I think most of my inspiration is for sure pulled from like just rock climbing.
Cool.
I think a little bit aesthetically, not necessarily any like specific form of art, I guess, but just kind of the idea of something being contemporary or modern sometimes influences the aesthetic line that you might choose, for me at least, compared to something that you might consider more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a cool video. I think Jake sent it to our like setter chat, and it was they were at one of the big Earth Treks gyms, and they did basically like a boulder art gallery where all the setters like did exactly what that question said. They like took their inspiration from like all kinds of places, and they did these like crazy like art boulders that people could experience both visually and by climbing on them. So I think it was Jake, if you want to say what that video was called or whatever.
I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was at the Earth Treks down in Crystal City, I'm pretty sure. If you just look up like art Earth Treks competition, you could probably find it. It was pretty popular when it happened, I think. So
Yeah, those are awesome looking boulders. Would have been cool to see like how they climbed, what the experience there would have been like. Yeah, anybody else draw inspiration from any of these things? If you're tasked with setting something, I think there was a short period of time when I would ask you to set aesthetically pleasing boulders, and like in the beginning of those couple of weeks to the end of those couple of weeks, what were you thinking about? Did anything change, or you just keep setting the same boulders?
I think that hold selection is important in setting like aesthetically pleasing boulders. I think you have to have some kind of continuity and connection of hold shape. Like if you're putting a whole bunch of just like random piece together unmatching holds on a route, like it's just not going to look good. But if you have a set that is, in some way connected thematically, chances are that whatever movement you create with it, it will look better.
Yeah, I think to speak directly to the question, the things that were listed like architecture, art, non-rock related natural features, things that people think look good kind of all follow the same basic principles. Like Discord things can look cool if it's done correctly. If it's just a bunch of random holes screwed on the wall with no pattern, maybe that could be really cool looking. It could climb really well, maybe not. It just all depends on what holes you choose and what the rest of the wall looks like. If some buildings, architecture wise, some buildings look really cool in Pittsburgh. They're just big glass steel buildings, very simple. Like we can set routes like that too on the wall with only like 1 or 2 holes, maybe a couple of volumes, and just get like nothing on the wall, and it looks really nice. Other buildings in Pittsburgh are these big churches with all the natural stone and all these different textures in it. That looks really cool too. We can kind of do the same thing on the wall if we want to, but I think what everybody's saying is that we don't think about those kinds of things before we start putting things up. We're just kind of following those same basic principles, same ideas.
Yeah, there can be some inspiration for, like you said, like the aesthetics of the route. I don't know if anybody's drawing inspiration of the movement of the route from anything other than climbing. I could be
There was
wrong.
a day we played setting games where we were just fed really abstract metaphors, and we had to set a route that resembled it, and I was a grouch about it. But the one we set
I
was
remember that. That's what I was gonna say.
the one that Maria and I set was party tricks a penguin would play. I don't remember what it looked like, but it was realistic.
Yeah.
I think my favorite one from that was what was the one, like stuck in a cave and you can't get out?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That was me and Carrick. We were like stuck at the bottom of a cave and like seeing the light, and we were in the cave. It was that one was stupid.
And Humpty Dumpty.
It was perfect.
I like that exercise because I think it just plays off the idea which is what I think about when I'm stuck. Like I have an idea for a kind of movement or a somewhat kind of style, and even if you have that really vague starting point and you go back and choose holds like Micah said, you can come up with something that fits in that style, and then the forerunning process makes it cooler. I find that if I'm feeling stuck, once it gets to forerunning, it gets better.
Yeah, for sure.
When it comes to being stuck and being out of inspiration, I think it's, maybe similar to if anybody else has hobbies that are, be it writing or painting or anything like that, when you don't feel inspired, I think one of the important things to do is just to like kind of dive into it, just do it, and not overthink it or put too much value on the fact that you're not inspired, and just actually do the thing. And inspiration will come as you keep doing it.
Yeah. The other thing to think about with that is you have a little bit of leeway as a route setter some days to be stuck. But at the end of the day, we're trying to put routes up in a commercial gym. So you can't be stuck that long. You have to start doing things. You have to start getting routes up. You got to start putting holes on the wall. And like Aaron said, it's not that common where once you start putting holes on the wall, you're just still stuck. When you start putting holds up and you know a little bit about how to climb, you put a hold up, turn it, there's always like this is where I would want to put my foot next. And you can always go in that direction and just start putting things up. Even if you're not inspired, you still have to produce. Cool. Here's a quick one. How long does it take to set a route? Normally, what's the longest it's ever taken you to set a route? I know I've spent hours on a route before, and then I have to take it down.
Comp routes can take a long time, but I mean, I don't know why I jumped into this question. I think like maybe like it depends on the route. If you're setting something that's really in the wheelhouse for you, that's like not really stretching your setting, brain or whatever, you can just bang it out. Hopefully it should take 30-40 minutes to get holds, put them on the wall, and then it'll have to get 4 runs, so maybe it'll get another like 10 or 15 minutes of attention then. But
I think the most frustrating part for me is that a lot of times like a boulder that's gone up in like 20 minutes, I'll have dozens of people tell me like, man, that's such a good boulder, like I really like that. And then there's a boulder that I spend 4 hours on that's just like a steaming pile of garbage, and it's still on the wall, and it took like 4 hours of work, and it's very disappointing.
Yeah, that happens. Happens. That's okay. That's okay. People like what they like. We like what we like. Those things don't always coalesce into a perfect union. Okay, let's do some more of Jada's questions. How much of the route do you plan in advance versus just making it up as you go? I think that totally depends on the inspiration question and what the assignment is, and and like Micah said, if it's in your wheelhouse or not.
I think at most, what I'll have planned for a route would just be maybe the crux sequence, and then I usually end up like figuring out the rest of the route around that, trying to feed into the same style, that sort of thing. But I've also definitely just taken it one step at a time all the way through. Definitely depends.
Cool. All right, here's a couple of questions that kind of all go together. How much consideration goes towards the customer when setting routes?
I would say a lot.
I think that's a fair answer. So what is athletic empathy, and what role does it play in the route setting world? I think those two things are pretty much the same. Does anybody want to dive into that?
I'll start, I guess. So obviously every person is different and every climber has different strengths and weaknesses, and that certainly applies to us route setters. And so as a route setter, our job is to set routes that anyone from a kind of out of shape person who's coming in to climb for the first time, they should be able to come into the gym and have a great day and really get their money's worth. And we should be able to have a really experienced climber who, maybe even a pro climber come in and have routes to do that are really going to, fulfill their desires for the day. And we have to fill in everything in between so that hopefully every grade progression has something, and everyone is going to be able to spend time and get their money's worth out of their experience and walk away with a smile.
All right, to go on with that, how do you assign grades to a climb? Somebody not Micah?
It really depends. We want to have like a good even distribution of grades across the gym. So obviously we don't want to have in Youngstown, like we usually only have about 60 problems up, so we don't want to have 35 V7s. So we'll take stock of what grades are up in the gym right now, and then kind of make that decision when we have our setting day that we need this many V0s and this many purple circuits and so on.
Yeah.
So
one thing I just wanted to add kind of along the lines of athletic empathy as you were talking about is for me, something that I think about a lot during the forerunning process is, as Mike was saying, when we try and make it appealing to people of all different climbing abilities when they come into the gym, is also things like size in particular. As a short person, as the shortest person on the team, that's something that I think I take as a as a role. Tia, I don't know if you feel this too, or like how that works with you, but
she's never felt that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny to set something that, or as a group, if we set something that has a jump and or some kind of dynamic movement, and I get on it, and it either works or it doesn't, trying to find out the exact balance of how it works for some, how accessible it is maybe for somebody who's small, and having it also be appropriately difficult for somebody who's taller. And I think there's a lot of like ego checking when you're forerunning, and like the route is no longer for you, it's for the climber, and so making it appropriate for everyone.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. Is the route's not for you; it's for the climber. I think that's kind of plays into the idea of when a route setter starts setting something, they're thinking about who they want to set it for and what they want from it. And almost never is the answer to that question, I want to set this climb with little tiny crimps on it, or big huge slopers and gigantic moves so that I can do it and feel like really cool. That's almost never the case.
Yeah, I think one of the really big benefits we've had for our setting team in general is the fact that we've hosted regionals a few years in a row now. And hosting, I think that comp in particular, since it does break down all the kids by age groups, does make you really conscious about the idea of your setting for a particular group of people, be it based on strength or height. And you just have to think through a lot of those different variables that go into the mindset of the person who's climbing. Be it an 8-year-old boy or a 17-year-old girl, that there are differences, and really being able to kind of be in that mindset of how is the climber going to take this problem? How are they going to feel on this move? How are they going to reach this? Where are their feet going to be? And I think just doing that for the last few years for the majority of the team here has been super helpful in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And then seeing everybody climb on those routes afterwards and still enjoy them. Like the D routes get as much, people enjoy those routes as much or more than they enjoy like the A junior routes for sure. So it's just it's always interesting to see that just because a route's not set for somebody, they still can have a lot of fun on it. And going back to the how to assign a grade thing, I think that all of that stuff that we just said kind of plays into that. At least for me, like when we're forerunning something, I think is when the grade of the climb really starts to pop out. Almost regardless of how we started, like where it was on the grade scale, where it should have been. If the route's really fun and it's awesome and it's fair and it's just the wrong grade, a lot of times we'll keep it and we'll just try to make up for that some other place. So yeah, the forerunning process and thinking about who's going to use it and how big somebody is and where the feet are and different sequences that people can go. All of those things go into us deciding what grade a climb is supposed to be or going to be. All right. So a question that Connor kind of brought up for his inspiration a little while ago was indoor and outdoor climbing. He said he drew a lot of inspiration from outdoor climbing. You want to talk a little bit more about that, like outdoor versus indoor climbing, where that inspiration comes from, and what the differences could be?
Yeah, outdoor climbing for me is, I kind of always considered myself a rock climber before everything else. I just really love being outdoors, and climbing outdoors is, I think, the best way to have fun. So definitely the movement outdoors is that I like is usually a lot thuggier, kind of more powerful, kind of just pulling and fighting hard, and it maybe is a little bit less problem solving than some of the indoor climbs. So still bringing that kind of like thuggy outdoor, just pure power side of climbing to things sometimes is fun.
For sure. What's your favorite place to go climb, Connor?
Probably the Fins in Idaho.
Wow, that doesn't sound very thuggy.
No, that's not very thuggy, but it's very much what I spent the whole summer out there and put up a lot of FAs and
nice.
Just spent the most time climbing there.
Cool.
In my life.
Ryan, what's your favorite place to go climb? You have a favorite outdoor location, and do you bring any of that inside with you?
My favorite place that I've been would probably be Bishop in California. That place is not really it's really different from climbing indoors. Like Bishop, particularly the buttermilks, is everything's really sharp. If you've never been there, it's like crimps that just cut into your skin. Like if you don't have good skin, you'll pull on one problem and you'll just rip your fingers up. So that's something that I don't want to do when I set, is use a hold that'll just rip your skin up. But no, definitely movements like from climbs wherever, it's usually like a move by move inspiration, not like a full. If you try to recreate like a full boulder in stores, it usually ends up not being very good. But I feel like if you take like a move or two that you did outside and like try to not recreate it exactly, but make something similar to it, that can end up being really cool, I think.
For sure. Yeah, I get that a lot. Like when I go through like periods of when I'm climbing outside in a certain space a whole lot, or like climbing on one particular boulder or route, and find myself when I'm doing like an overhanging route, like when I'm climbing at the red a whole lot, I'll come back into the gym and I won't be setting sequences on routes, but I'll be setting things that are longer and pumpier and more in that style. I get the feeling of the route more than individual moves from the route. Or if I'm like in a bouldering kick and I'm going to places with like really overhanging, powerful climbs, then when I come into the gym, I'll find myself setting things that are like open-handed and powerful with like that super intense feeling, where I might not actually be setting the moves I'm doing or something like that. Or like if I'm climbing in a place with lots of little crimps, I'll just navigate towards the crimp section of the hold room and pull out the little guys and start putting them up on the wall just to kind of like get that feeling again. So that's kind of where indoor and outdoor climbing coalesce for me. Anybody else want to chime in on that question before we're kind of wrapping things up here? So yeah, no, okay. All right. So what is the first thing you want to do when you get back to the gym? Once things are open again, what's the first thing you want to do? And are you planning any routes for us to climb on?
Climb.
Climb. What about route setting? What's the first route you're going to set when you get back? What are the holds you're going to go for?
I want to finish cleaning the blue wall.
Thanks. Everybody's going to appreciate that. There's only like another 700 magic erasers. Yeah, anybody?
I would say the comfy crimps.
That's what you're longing for?
My go-to hold right now.
Nice.
I was gonna say I'm gonna avoid crimps for quite a while. I'm gonna give the people the slopers because that's what the people will want.
Everybody's at home hangboarding. Their finger strength is gonna be great.
Well, for those of you who aren't doing that, I'm gonna give you the slopers.
Man of the people. Yeah, anybody else? I know I'm gonna go straight for the slab and get some volumes and stand on my feet. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That's what I want. I want to be climbing, but also I feel cooped up. I just want to like run, but also on the wall and be vertical.
Yeah, those feature boulders we were about to do. We were gonna literally the day that PA shut down. That was like Thursday night, and on Friday we were gonna come in and set like feature boulders on the slab. So maybe that'll be the first thing we do when we go back. I don't know.
Nice. Cool. All right, guys. It's been about an hour, and we could probably. I still have like 40 questions that we didn't get through, so we're gonna get through those tonight. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, if anybody's still watching and has any questions and wants to put something in real quick, we can answer like one more question. If not, if you come up with something in the next couple of days, shoot us an email or message us on social media, and we'll get back to you with whatever we can. All right, guys. Anything else?
We miss you, all of you.
All right.
All right, talk to you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
See you soon, guys. Take care.